Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another stream of MTG Arena. Today is Monday, January 6th. Let's see, I've kept the most of the weekend away from playing Magic, so we actually do have a full pile up of daily quests here. And boy, something sounds funny on my microphone. Maybe it's just because I have both ears actually covered and I usually don't have that. Alright, so we have made it to rank 118. We're going to get 15 daily quests within this week. We'll do this and hopefully get 15 victories. We'll do all of these and these will give us experience. So we're looking at probably by the end of today, as long as we get all three of these done, which we should, 2, maybe even 3 of these. Meanwhile, we're still teetering at silver tier 4. We have 9 days until the rotation ends. So this will be our last week of Throne of Eldraine, and then we start with the next thing. Theros Beyond Death. There's really nothing more to do. Now there's this rank draft Dominaria. So, Dominaria, where does that build in? This set is not legal in standard. So Dominaria must be a particularly old expansion on the arena scale of basically having 2 years into it. There is something about collectible card games in particular where people come in later than they probably should. So yeah, Galaxia or Elaxian, yeah, and then Rivals of Elaxian, the Dominaria, then Core Set 2019, which came out at the end of 2018, and then the Historic Anthology has been retroactively added here to be above Core Set of 2019, and I imagine it probably will move further pretty quickly as we start to see other expansions get put out of standard play also. So that is definitely not the rank draft to do. It would be ridiculous to play Brawl of Days at this point. Basically spend $12 for one commander card. So then that just leaves us with, notice how these moved around. We probably shouldn't do that. Green or white spells, green or blue spells, that means we're going to play green. There's no reason to go back and do the standard shakeup. And let's just start by playing a standard game here instead of a standard ranked game, because I really don't trust myself to actually get victories with the green deck. After we play all the green cards that need to be played, we'll move over, I guess, back to the black deck and play ranked and continue to grind it out. Like, yeah, this green deck, if I recall correctly, there's a lot of food tokens and a lot of creatures. I saw a strategy, but I don't remember what the strategy was now. I didn't actually act upon it and build a deck based on the strategy using green decks, and it probably would have been very helpful to know that. Let's go ahead and put that at the bottom of the deck. So yeah, over the weekend, just more programming, but it has certainly been past a point where I need to start getting back to recording stuff. I kind of have some footage until February, but falling behind is still falling behind. So that there really is no justification that can be made. I do want to at some point around March or after March, shift the pre-recorded Magic Arena episodes to just air on the weekends. That just means there would be no Magic Arena episodes airing at all on Tuesday and Thursday. There would be live streams on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then old episodes on Saturday and Sunday, which I think that works fairly well. And it opens up another time slot where more notifications could be given out for a third potential game, which I probably need to start thinking about doing, recording a third potential game and getting back to it. As for my programming, I have entered the realm. Last time I talked, I recall I was talking about how I don't really know a good system to make an array of time events and have them easily sorted and easy read. It's funny because I've already set up all the user settings using JavaScript objects, so JSON files, which is the right way to kind of have save files that a program could use if the settings are going to be very varied and not really related to each other. However, since all the events in a Google Calendar are the opposite of that and are actually let's see, are actually going to be the exact same bits of information over and over again, an SQL database is the better move. So I'm using two completely separate systems. I'm using SQLite, I believe version 3, or I've made the beginnings of using it. I haven't gotten too far into that code. Mostly I spent most of the weekend just dealing with drawing pictures, icons, and kind of taking a little bit of a break from the hardcore coding part. But yeah, by putting all of the events, all the V events from as they're called, from an iCalendar, a Google, Apple, iCloud calendar. I guess it is technically an Apple iCloud calendar standard. Let's see. This instant did not work. That was dumb. That was dumb. I wish I could undo that. That was really, really dumb. Because I could have put that on the field, then gotten more mana. Instead, I'm going to lose. So yeah, an SQL database with two tables, I believe. One of just universal unique IDs to indicate that those are ignored things you don't need to deal with, to then filter out a second table that has universal unique IDs, and then a start time and an end time and the text that should be displayed based on that event. Would work very well. It does get into a more complicated, for me, lesser known SQL programming, of which that can be a pain, certainly. Also, decided as part of the just initial setup of it that it would probably be a cool thing, since This is a device that really doesn't have any buttons or inputs. As the initial setup, if I have it... Alright, let's do this. Alright, how many can we use? 5 plus that, which would be 6 plus minus 2 should be 4. Double the number of counters, I suppose. And then no attack. So yeah, dealing with an SQL database will be a little bit more difficult. Oh yeah, I was talking about the client. In theory, in the setup, when it's acting as its own Wi-Fi access point, whenever anybody connects to it, it can then detect that and then change the screen to a step 2. Sadly, there really isn't a QR code standard, and that's how this is working, is a QR code to connect to the Wi-Fi. There isn't really a QR code standard that says connect to a Wi-Fi and go to this website. Although I'm still planning on doing a captive DNS portal, so any website they try to go to will just take them to the setup website for that brief interaction to set everything up. So that's a cool thing. I made one of the QR codes, but it doesn't seem like by default in at least my cell phone, when you take a QR code picture, it doesn't seem like it really wants to have the password involved as some weird, I guess, security measure. And even though that's totally part of the QR standard to provide the password also, it seems like it doesn't always work, so that sucks. But the instructions on the screen will easily explain all of that away. And it's hardly like I'm making the password hard for people. I wanted to make it as idiot-proof as possible. Alright, we'll take another season of the growth. And do we want to play this? I guess we do. I don't know if I really thought of any more of the programming though. Like it was kind of more of a laid back, just messing with the art of it. I'm having more difficulty than I care to admit just drawing a low battery lightning bolt. I'm trying to not have, since it's a full screen image, I'm trying to do it using draw line from point X to point X2 and point Y, and XY to XY, X2, XY, Y2 point, like on a graphing calculator, compared to just drawing a lot of the other icons, which are not so much. Let's cancel that. They really aren't so much about let's see. Let's not do that. And let's not do that. the other icons I just draw
by
making a long character array or string of just zeros and ones because it's a black and white screen. So
I know I noted this somewhere.
And in all fairness, I probably should not label them as characters in arrays and relabel them as something else so it takes up less memory. Although, since these are icon images, I can just put them into program memory anyways, and it really won't matter. That is something about embedded design that is kind of weird, is you have this, you have less RAM, and you are doing a lot more with the RAM in particular, because there's an EEPROM chip that you could write data to that, which might be useful,
to the library.
But probably really isn't, because there's also flash memory on it. So you'd just be better off using the flash memory. Fights a creature. Oh man, I don't want to do that. Can I undo? Let's see. Nope. I screwed up. Cancel. Z. So all I can try and do now is make good on that, and
your aggression is noted.
Yeah, there's a lot of weirdness on it, certainly. Having a different kind of RAM that is lost, well, most of the RAM is lost when the device goes to sleep. Some of the RAM, if you label it, there's a much smaller amount of RAM that won't be lost. Unless, I guess, the battery is completely lost, but otherwise you can put things in the electronically erasable, programmable read-only memory, or EEPROM, which, if you put it in EEPROM, there's only so many reads and writes you could do with that, so you'd have to be careful. Actually, I already missed that, so there's no point in doing this. I could have attacked and killed that, and I screwed up. But yeah, I don't know why you really would ever use the EEPROM in this specific device. It would almost have to be some long, like, security certificate or bit of information that you would want to write into it. Something that would never change. And I honestly doubt that any of the stuff on programming has any kind of like security or encryption on it, so that would kind of not make a lot of sense to do that. I imagine if you're trying to do some kind of like cryptographic, I don't know, Bitcoin wallet or something, you might put a security key in the EEPROM there to save save memory, or it might just be a mental thing where things in EEPROM are supposed to be set before you would hand the device to the end user. But for my uses, and I think most people's practical uses, there's very little reason you get to use it. Alright, what do we want now? There you go, season of growth. 3 seasons of growth. No attacks. We are getting back into the normal swing of things, as it were. So we do have a decent number of games to talk about and news. Not a lot of news. I don't think maybe any news at all. Like the Switch, I think, has outsold the Super NES. So good for it. I am getting a little worried as I'm starting to think about maybe getting myself a Switch, which really I don't have time for. A little worried that maybe if I put it off a year or two, we would be very close to a Switch version 2. And that would be something I would want to kind of avoid, is paying a pretty high premium on a brand new Switch, because you can't really trust buying a used one without the screen being scratched or something like that. Like, I really wouldn't be upset about if there was yet another version of the Switch that came out, but if they came out with a completely different, completely compatible device, that would be kind of crazy. I don't know if even Switch fans and Nintendo users would be super happy about that. There are rumors popping up, and I imagine these are rumors that will just pop up and go both directions, that the new Xbox, the Xbox Series X, is significantly more powerful than the PlayStation 5. I imagine there was another rumor at some point in the past few weeks that said the exact opposite. One of the Japanese game company's developers said it was significantly easier to program on the PlayStation 5 in comparison, I think, particularly to the PlayStation 3 and its crazy cell processor, which, no duh. So I don't think there's
seek and find
too much to really worry about on either ends. I think you'll be perfectly happy with either choice, depending on what you're looking for, and that is going to be the big depending. Each creature in my grave. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't really need that. Don't really need that. And really don't need that. Go ahead and attack this planeswalker. See if they decide to defend. Go ahead and attack this way. See if they decide to play any spells. Nope. So yeah. Guess we should start covering the news. There's, I don't think anything else to really talk about. Just the weekend happened. I mean, certainly there is news that's not video game related to talk about, but it's not video game related, so I have no interest in talking about it. So, come on, decide to start playing.
No tail should be discarded.
We really probably don't have that much, that many games, but we do have a decent amount of games. And yeah, of course, my insomnia is still wreaking havoc. This past few days in particular, I've been awake for a couple hours and falling asleep. It really is like a 4 to 6 hour I'm awake, then a 2-hour nap, and then like another 4 to 6 hour. What? I didn't want that. Can I undo that? Yes, I can. I don't think it matters, but I'll undo it anyways. I've been desperately trying to kill this planeswalker and not getting anywhere with it. Oh, I also played a girl Adrift on my phone because I was getting a little bored. Dealing with the graphics while programming requires it to basically reinstall the program and reboot, which that's where you add a lot of time, certainly in development. So I've seen advertisements for the game A Girl Adrift, and I believe it is even on Steam. I'll check in a second. Just brought him back.
Looks intriguing tonight.
And I thought it was more of an adventure game, kind of like a low-effort dungeon crawler. And it is, I guess, technically a dungeon crawler, but it's in the form of a kind of minimal effort tapper game where it's a chibi anime girl that is in a flooded world on a raft, and she's just fishing all over the place, and she goes from point A to point B in the map and fishes, and you tap to catch the fish, and your level goes up, and then you can fish deeper and get higher level fish. The fish are kind of weirdly drawn, and there's a few shops and a few elements that get added as you're trying to work your way up to, I guess, level 50. Then it seems like at about level 50 you probably end the game. So I really don't 100% understand how that's gonna work, because it does have the microtransaction stuff, and it does have a lot of purchasable things with in-game currency and real-world currency, but unless it has like a better system to make the game a lot more automated. Eventually does unlock some automation, but I'm still tapping quite a bit and it is definitely hurting my finger tapping so much. So yeah, it totally feels like a game that would really only last at most I could have done that at any point, couldn't I? Yeah, it really feels like a game that'll last maybe a week. And that's about it. Wish this guy had trample. And remember that these have instance on them. But even at that, if this guy did have trample, he's not strong enough to win on one hit. And his oven strategy can just basically win the game for me. Play this. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. Let me ask this question. If I did this, is this now in the graveyard? Or is this in some side point? Let's wait for this to resolve and then let's see. Because if this is in the graveyard as a creature and playing this, like, is this technically in the graveyard? Doesn't look like it is. Definitely don't want that. Definitely don't want that. We'll take that. Right. 2/2 green wolf token. Just go ahead and not take that this time. And not take that. And sure, we'll try that. Meanwhile, we kind of have to do no attacks. And we're gonna lose. And we don't have enough mana to even eat a food. Alright, so we have a game on Steam here called Bomber X, which is another Bomberman clone. It looks particularly inconsistent in its asset flips. And its art, like, this just does not really match, and then the low polygon kind of Minecraft look of a Bomberman game doesn't really make sense. This is $1.19 and English only. Particularly for a Bomberman game, Bomberman has always been very circular and rounded to contrast the square blocks that are being blown up and coincide with the round bombs that are being placed. It doesn't make sense to go the other direction. So we do this, we do this, and we've lost. having hard time typing in girl Adrift, which is the name of that game. Well, it's not on Steam apparently. I imagine there is something similar. There we go. We nearly played all the greens that we need to do. So one more particularly long game. I would say compared to something like Raft though, the Girl Drift really does miss any of the major improvements to your Raft. It doesn't have that open screen space that you would have in something like Raft. There really isn't a shark that is your main antagonist. It's just fishing for fish. There actually is no fishing, as far as I understand. There's not a lot of fishing that you do in Raft anyways, which is kind of weird. But there's a base that you get material food fishing that you upgrade, a farm, but that seems to be about it. It really is one of those games where I'm not 100% sure who the target audience is for it. Frankly, it does seem simplistic and silly, like so many other mobile games. It just does not seem like it really has an idea as far as what let's see, sacrifice that to get mana. No, I don't think so. Not yet, at least. Meanwhile, the game I am still very much enjoying on my phone, Destiny Child, is still doing its thing with its world boss. I don't think there's really too much to say beyond that. Oh, this sacrifices food to add mana. Interesting. Do we want this guy on the field? Sure. He's actually a pretty good guy. This would need 2 mana to create a food token. So the golden goose is really only useful if you are in a situation with the greens where it does happen a lot, where you just have extra mana at the end of a turn. But you probably would only want 1, maybe 2 copies of Gilded Goose. I'd forgotten we were trying to get victories today. It's like every day you're trying to get victories, so I'd totally forgotten about that part. 3 more green cards and then we'll be done. It's going to be slightly irritating after doing all this programming, though, to have to then switch gears and do some 3D modeling for hardware adapter, basically. It's not particularly my forte, being if you're a more logical person. Now I cannot mulligan again at this point. Like, being more logical oriented 3D modeling is a little bit more difficult, although I do have education in it, somewhat. I took a drafting class in school and it's basically the same thing, generally speaking, but it's not my preferred system at all. And this being the prototyping phase, there's extra costs that will be incurred because in theory if this device really sells, then I would eventually, like within the first few units sold, invest in buying a 3D printer. Hopefully those first 50 to 100 units aren't the only 50 to 100 units in sales I would ever get. But getting like a simple 3D printer to have that printed inside my house instead of sending off to some service to have it 3D printed for me is the more ideal scenario. But every little step there is more effort and more time and more money, which I'd like to avoid having to do, but it's unavoidable in this case. Because, let's face it, electronics in-user products need some kind of case, some kind of cover on them. You can't have people spilling water or putting their fingers inside the electronics. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Finger Tactics, which looks like it's a mobile game that's been ported. Seems like it's a soccer sort of game. You really don't get any good indication of how this actually plays. It's called Flinger, not Finger, come to look at it. So you are just dragging your creatures and flinging them to play like bumper pool, effectively.
What a mess I've made.
Or air hockey, something similar to that. This is free to play with no in-app purchases, English only, so I guess if you want to try it, it's early access. This is the kind of game that I would say somebody is trying, but they lack the artistic style and the artistic ability. This doesn't feel like this is an extremely low effort game. It just looks like somebody really doesn't have the artistic ability or really much of a game concept here either. This is pretty simplistic. If this was a mobile game, it would get a lot more interest, I imagine, than being on Steam. It probably is on some mobile platform, if I was to guess. Guess I can play that next turn? Let's see. Interesting.
Vampirism is a useful trait.
We have an article here on Gamatsu for the PC, PS4, and smartphone. Genshin Impact details Clay. So another character is coming to whatever this game is, Genshin Impact. What kind of game is it, though? It's tagged as an RPG. It's due out worldwide in 2020. I almost feel like there is some series of things that are called that have Impact in the name, but I don't think they're games. I feel like maybe there's an anime with Impact in the name, and it might be that it's not really a series at all. Probably isn't. Might just be confusing the phrase Impact from like Third Impact from Neon Genesis Evangelion or something. We do have kind of a higher amount of Japanese bits of news, so I think that the Japanese are back to work whereas perhaps the Western people are still like recovering from their New Year's parties. Dan Rikers of the Giant Beastcast, Giant Bomb, left the company, and so probably going to work at some kind of wrestling thing, if I was to guess. But he is leaving writing for video games, it seems.
Your body, not your soul.
Which I don't think he was really doing any writing for video games anyways. Inherently, this is the problem with the Giant Bomb crew as they are now, is that unless they are writing a bunch of articles on their website, and I'm just not, and I don't follow their website, which is true, I don't follow their website, they are, let's see. I could swap the equipped here, but then that wouldn't really do anything. This guy has trample. Am I really gonna put this guy on the field and then pay 2 more to put him on the field? And then double the number of counters on them? And then just do no attacks. Yeah, the problem with Giant Bomb is that they're all personality based, and as far as I can tell, they're not really doing any reviews at all. In a similar story, IGN has changed their review score from a 100-point score to a 10-point score, I believe, which would just be less nuance. You really can't go from a 10-point score, from a 100-point score to a 10-point score. You can go the other direction and people will be like, oh, well, you're adding more nuance to your reviews. But if you're going the other way, it means you're basically planning on just giving 7s to 90% of all the games that come out. I may have lost the game right here. Yep. So then the other problem with Giant Bomb being personality based is a lot of their personalities don't do much, and they've kind of changed, and they've kind of gotten dull and boring ever since, I forget his name, frankly. The guy who was in charge died. Like ever since he died, the entire feel of the business has been completely different, and I've just kind of grown out of it. And I started listening to Giant Bomb at the same time I listened to Tested, and I don't listen to Tested at all, mostly because the main personality there didn't die in Tested, but just left the company and left them with boring characters talking about kind of boring things. They were always probably talking about boring things, but they had a way of making it not sound boring, and now it just sounds boring. Unfortunately, I just don't seem to be able to find a way to pull myself away from listening to their podcasts like on a weekly basis, and that's probably going to be fine, because what I am listening to right now is a bunch of YouTube like radio stations, and I'm going to burn out on all that content in relatively short amount of time, and then I'll be back to video game stuff. But yeah, specifically on the Bombcast, there's not a single person there that I really care about their opinions. I would say Abby, one of their newest additions, is probably the most interesting opinion out there, because at least her opinions on games, if she has any, are coming from somebody who isn't just saying the same thing over and over again because she hasn't been playing or reviewing games, and she is more of a she's a producer, and she's a unscripted actor with improv comic, so there's something there. Whereas, and she's on the Beastcast, and the Bombcast, it's really one, maybe two, maybe three people talking about a game, and they just go on for about 20 minutes, and it really is kind of boiling down to a meeting where they just drone on and talk about a game. Let's see. Now, you could, I suppose, get a little conspiratorial. It was Dan Rikers who totally hated Death Stranding and just said it was a piece of poop. I'm filtering that for YouTube. And that was basically his entire review the 2 or 3 times they asked him about it. So he totally wasn't being good about reviewing the game. Which, yeah, even if that is your feelings, being more descriptive is kind of your job as a video game reviewer. And I'm not sure at any point Dan Rikers was ever actually required or forced to act as a reviewer, and wasn't just allowed to be his weird personality. And I think that's part of why it falls, why his legacy is basically nothing. Just kind of obsessively having the same arguments and conversations and trying to get people to play Mario Party and play older games. Yeah, I guess what Giant Bomb really should do is they should shake it up, and they should get 1 or 2 people who are just hardcore game reviewers. And they've been moving away from doing game reviews for a while now. I think it's probably time to shake it up and go back to at least 1 reviewer. I probably should have attacked with that, but whatever. That way, there's always somebody once a week that can say, here's some real critical opinions. Scoops, I believe was his nickname, was kind of that. But he doesn't work there anymore. And Austin Walker was kind of that. Now, both of them also went into a bunch of SJW stuff, either slightly before or right after, and I believe Scoops was a major player in Gamergate, and I guess maybe that is kind of the problem, is that nobody wants to work with anybody. They've all got to stink of the Gamergate reaction in particular. So yeah, what I desperately need is to find some new podcast from some new game reviewers that are young, energetic, and actually like talking about what they're talking about. And I've yet to find that. Particularly, I'm running into a lot of people. I'd say the Game Grumps on YouTube are kind of in this position too, where they're doing their job reviewing games, but they're kind of unenthusiastic, and they're trying to go in different directions. Video Game Donkey is too comedic and too infrequent, and so it is probably just time for me to try and find some new people. It seems like every 4 or 5 years I burn out on video game reviews and podcasts and things, because they either do something to to expose themselves as being extremely biased in one way or another, or objectionable in some way, or they just get really, really burnt out and boring. It's not just YouTube burnout, it really is burnout in general on any project. And even my YouTube channel, I can feel a little bit of that, certainly. Like, it's not completely coincidental that I've spent the past month or so not recording content, even if I was working on other things. I really have no excuse to not be playing more games and making more content when I just spent a decent amount of money during the winter sale. Oh man, I forgot to put this in ranked, didn't I? That sucks. That could have been a victory towards ranked. But I guess we could call that a warm-up game. They were kind of teasing on Giant Bomb that they were going to do something different, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of argument or conversation around the game of the year as there had been in previous years, which also is probably a huge indication of a lack of passion in the fields. But they really didn't do much, unless the thing they felt good about was firing, like secretly firing Dan Rikers, which he didn't have anything lined up or announced as far as what his next job is, but his next job is also not, according to him, not really a video game thing, so that's not super surprising that you wouldn't announce, if you're going to work at a private company, where you wouldn't announce that. And honestly, it could have nothing to do with, if he was fired, it could have nothing to do with his just completely awful way in which he reviewed Death Stranding. I mean, I don't have a problem with what he said, it's just how he said it. It could be that it's just a matter of, in a lot of positions, you have to always be working towards that next promotion, working your way up. I wouldn't think it would be that case in Giant Bomb, but he really wasn't taking on any new responsibility or anything. So where Abby, again being a producer, if she got fired, they'd have to replace her with somebody skilled. Dan could easily be eliminated. They also didn't announce anything with Jeff from CNET, like he was gonna be a new member. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of 2020 he does at some point move over, because it is rather redundant for CNET to have a game division and Giant Bomb to exist. I wouldn't be surprised if Giant Bomb and CNET at some point got merged by some higher up. I do kind of have a problem with just not letting go of podcasts and finding new ones. The new ones is the problem. If there were new ones I found, if there was a recommendation engine as decent as even YouTube's recommendation engine, I would find new ones and I would get rid of the old ones. But that just doesn't happen. Anyways, I feel like I'm kind of rambling at this point. We have a Gamatsu article here. Ni no Kuni anime movie is coming to Netflix on January 16th. Two average teens go on a magical quest to save the life of their best friend. So this doesn't seem like these are the same characters. And frankly, these don't even really look like they are the age group of the main character from Ni no Kuni 1. It's from the animator of Studio Ghibli, Yoshiyuki Momose, who worked, I guess, animated on Spirited Away, is now going to direct, which, if this is a actual Studio Ghibli film and it's not him working on the side, doesn't inherently mean it's going to be good, because only Ghibli movies, and only mostly the Ghibli movies from that are good are from the main guy at Ghibli, the main director. All the side things that he's tried to have his son do, or he's tried to let other people do, have kind of failed pretty terribly. Or they're still relatively high quality, but they're not great. Let's see. I don't know if there's really anything super interesting to say beyond that, though, about it. It's a anime based on a video game. We probably should see more of those, and if it would open the door to more video game based properties that are good showing up on Netflix, that's not a terrible move. But there are definitely some problems in the fact that we know Netflix is trying to kind of call almost all animation anime, even if it isn't, and redefine what anime is. And this is pretty much what all Western publishing and companies and animation companies are trying to push, is this concept that a Western developer making a game for a Western audience with mostly Western animators is somehow making anime, and not in my book. That just does not sell. They're trying to effectively cut out the Japanese market, the Japanese mentality, the Japanese art styles. And if this was allowed to go on, what Netflix would be calling anime would look a lot like Teen Titans Go or something like that. And so that's a cynical approach to it. Netflix really hasn't been the greatest of curators as far as anime content. They've kind of tried, but they've mostly failed. Even though they got Neon Genesis and they redid that, it's really not like this is that they've done a great job. And I haven't even watched anything on Netflix in probably 3 or 4 months, including the Witcher series, which I probably should go and watch that, but I'm not super interested in doing that at the moment. I'll eventually get around to it. I feel like there's a high chance and a high risk of, if Netflix started greenlighting a bunch of animated things. This sucks. How in the world did that happen? Right. How did he get so many things on the field? I'm gonna just attack. Is he really just gonna let me do this? All right. See, the crazy thing here too is that if I had gotten Bola Citadel at any point, I would have been fine, but I don't think I survive even this next turn, because there's like 40 damage here and another 12 damage here. Yeah, it could be a significant distraction, certainly, to a lot of game developers, both in the East and the West, if they started making games specifically just as a movie pitch or a TV show series pitch for Netflix. The Uncharted series in particular is a kind of great example of that, because the Uncharted series really does feel like, whether it was intended to be this way originally or not, it totally feels like a Indiana Jones style adventure movie pitch that just happened to be made in game form. And the movies for Uncharted have been like in production hell for years, with little to no progress actually being made. So I think you could see a lot of people accidentally spending way too much energy and money trying to make a game that's effectively not good, to pitch it as a movie that it might be good as a movie, but it didn't get the audience in the first place. In all seriousness, if you were going to make a game, a movie based on a video game, you would want to make it on something that is historical and proven itself. So it totally would make sense to make a Super Mario Brothers movie right now, or Super Mario 64 movie right now. You could go through Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3. Like, you could make little animated kid-friendly shorts on all of those pretty easily with very little risk. Even the Sonic movie, for as ugly as it looks, does make sense from that perspective. It is a proven series of games that people are at least aware of, whether they like them or not. Whereas something like the Assassin's Creed movie, even though there were many iterations of the Assassin's Creed games, really never proved itself to be that super popular that it deserved a movie. And then what they did to it to change everything was totally crazy. And that would not be any different in an anime form factor either. You'd almost certainly have something like the anime Wolverine series, where it just gets more Japanese focused and more bloody and more violent and more sex and nudity than what you would expect or want from a Marvel property. Yeah, Wolverine is Marvel, I believe. And I cannot do anything. So I'm just messed up on land. Probably should have mulliganed the third time. Go ahead and block with this. Finally. Yeah. I would say possibly some of the more niche things, like the Alice Madness Returns series, probably would do fine as an anime because it's already crazy and wild in the first place, or the Alice, American McGee's Alice original game. That would probably work well. It would probably work better telling a story, which is what I think they're more focused on anyways. But that would be about it. Like, Hellblade's Sesuna's Sacrifice probably would work fine as a movie. The most recent God of War would probably work fine as a movie. Some of the bad games like Remember Me probably would work fine, better as a movie. But a lot of the major successful ones probably won't work that well. In part, I would say because the elements that are good about many games are not the story. It's not like video game is well known for good writing. At best, it gets decent writing. Like the Portal series, even. Like my favorite series would probably not be any better as a movie. If you just watch the entire story of Portal 1 and Portal 2 as a movie. And if you wanted to do that, frankly, you could already do that on YouTube as just a cutscene collection or quick play or long play. Like you could do it on my channel literally right now. Just look up the playlist of Portal 1 and Portal 2 and you get the story right then. There's no reason to reanimate that. And then I guess you could go crazy and you could cover something like the Mortal Kombat, make a Mortal Kombat series or a fighting game where there's very little story. Or you could do like Call of Duty or Modern Warfare type stories where there's some story in the single player but very little of it is the focus. I don't know if anybody would really want to watch that though. And honestly, I think just in general speak, you would want all art to be unique and original. Like, more unique and original art is pretty much what we always want in every medium. Like, I don't want something that's derivative. And a video game, movie, TV series, anime on Netflix or anywhere else is by the definition derivative. It is derived from another source, and we don't need that. Like, I'd much prefer something slightly inspired and being its own thing. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I feel about it, and not too much of a rant. And there we have 3 swamps to start with, so I won't hopefully lose the 3rd time here. Next game we have on Steam, and we need to hurry up here, we have Zoo Constructor, which is already mixed. This is not from a developer I recognize. I believe there's probably some other zoo management games. This one's $14.99 discounted, English and German. Yeah, there's other things you could be playing, certainly. Let's see, Jurassic World Evolution is mostly positive. Architect is very positive. Planet Zoo is very positive. Yeah, so there's at least three zoo architect style games, zoo management style games already. It doesn't make a lot of sense to. I'm gonna go ahead and play this, what you see. I keep these in supply when I really probably shouldn't. Let's see. Here. Black. Let's go no attack. And end the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called The Burning Descent, which looks like it's a VR shooting game. It seems like it has teleportation, which I think would be disconcerting. We already looked at this game, or at least we looked at a game very similar to this. So maybe I just got some redundancy. It says it came out January 3rd. Early access requires VR, $11.99. English full audio allegedly. I'm not signed in either, so I forgot to do that. Draw another card. At the beginning of your upcut, exile your top card. Does 1 damage to the opponent. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Saber Fight VR, which is already mixed. Some of these games, certainly, if I was just waiting a week or so, I would already see the general feeling on some of the games, but a lot of games also don't get reviewed at all, even 6 months later. A VR game where you play with a lightsaber, in theory, looks like an interesting idea. In practicality, the graphics are not polished enough here, and I don't think there's any like enemies or anything to fight with. This is $8.99, which is a little too cheap for VR. It's about right. It's English full audio. With subtitles. It's just, yeah, too simplistic, probably does not feel very entertaining. Let's put this on the field, and this on the field, and this guy has that card, and no attack. All I need is 1 Vindictive Vampire and this on the field, and I could probably win in the next turn, maybe 2. Alright. So we play this, we don't play this, because we're going to play this instead. Play this. Play this. Do this. Do this. Do this. How far do we want to go with this? Probably not any further than that. I wouldn't want to sacrifice 3 of my guys. So that got me 2 pips up, where I was 2 pips down, but we still are teetering between silver tier 4 and the next tier. Next we have a game on Steam called God of Gym, which looks like it's probably a troll low effort game, or at least it's a collection of what looks like tapping mini games in which you're working out. It's 99 cents, it's English and Russian. Yep, that feels like a low effort Russian game, or troll game. So, that's not something that needs to be on the fall list. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Ragnarok acquires Rune 2 source code and assets following a legal complaint. Let's see. It filed a legal complaint against the developer Human Head Studios. I believe we talked about that several weeks ago. Although both companies worked together to release the action RPG, the pair were embroiled in a legal skirmish as a result of Human Head closing its door only to immediately form a new studio under the Bethesda Softworks banner. So this was Bethesda, probably at the direction of Bethesda, trying to pull some shenanigans, which Bethesda has been known to be very litigious and shady in their actions. It seems like this is a so now Ragnarok, I guess now that they have the source code, is going to have to work to do whatever they're going to do for Rune 2, if they're going to do anything with it. This may simply been a matter of them ensuring that they kept the assets that they felt were due to them, and apparently they were due to them as they did succeed. It really does kind of show one of the major flaws in capitalism is that it really isn't just a buyer beware, it's like everyone beware, even your partners beware, businesses beware, everybody beware, because all kinds of shenanigans happen all over the place, and half the time it's probably not even due to malicious intent, it's just people doing crazy things and not doing the things that they agree to or the things that they should do morally. Like, ideally, if I was in charge, and I would say that when any company goes out of business and shuts their doors, I would say all the assets should immediately at that point go into public domain, and then that would probably help society a little bit more than it just changing hands, which it really is all assets ever do, and it all ends up in Disney's hands eventually.
We all make sacrifices.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called To the Sea, the Courier, which you don't really need a subtitle on a game that hasn't even been established yet. This looks like a Chinese kind of low effort top-down twin stick shooter game, although it is all over the place with asset flips, and it really just looks like a bunch of screenshots from several different games. It's early access, $5.94, English and Chinese. Who would have guessed? Yep. So, not a product not needing to be under consideration. Which, I think that's a lot of the games to that in the past week, over the weekend. Gonna go ahead and attack with this and attack with this. Next we have a game on Steam, My Friend is a Raven. This looks like this is a horror pencil sketch style game. Little dark screenshot syndrome, but I think that is to establish the mood, if anything. It's free, so the price is right. Third party EULA, I don't know why. English full audio. What looks like just checking. Current project is My Beautiful Paper Smile, which is coming out in 2020. So he's releasing a different game. I guess I'll put this on the fall list and see if people review it.
I demand servitude.
It's probably super short as a kind of point-and-click adventure game. It's probably not got a lot going for it. But yeah, that might very well be the only interesting game we even see today.
Recklessness and fear are the seeds
Still can
of
definitely
disaster.
feel that it's in that beginning of the year
Lies
slump.
beyond vision.
If I play this, I will just bring back this and this. Is there any 3 mana thing I can do? No. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and attack this. and then not do anything else. Next we have a game on Steam called Gifted, which looks like it's some kind of Christmas themed game. Looks like it might be kind of nothing. Yeah, it says it's a technical prototype. It's a third-person single-player and couch co-op role-playing social economic simulation and village building game, which means it's pretty much nothing. It's free, English only. Yeah, I imagine you can do very little, and you just walk around and kind of decorate the environment. And the decorations don't look terrible. I mean, there really could be a game here.
What a mess I made.
But they didn't bother to finish it. And since they're releasing this allegedly on January 3rd, this is probably just an abandonment of it instead of putting another year of effort into it and releasing it slightly before at Christmas time next year. So yeah, I don't see a reason to put that on the fall list. Next we have a game called Nordic Storm Solitaire, another solitaire game. They're all pretty much made with the same engine and all look pretty much the same. Although I would say the card art on this is particularly bad compared to some of the other card art I've seen. That A looks pretty awful. That 5 does not look the same size as that king. It's $3.39 and a bunch of language support from HH Games, which is the publisher of cheaper games, solitaire games, hidden object games. If HH Games were the bottom of the line, like if that was the level of quality that Steam said is just barely good enough to be on Steam, I would be happy. Like, their games aren't great ever, but they're cheap and they're decent enough in quality. Unfortunately, Steam consistently allows a lot worse to be released. Like, the only thing I can really do is like tap this guy and then attack with this and this, and this probably won't work. Next we have a game on Steam called Riznutch, which is a weird name. It looks like it's some kind of RPG sort of development. Problem here is there's no video of movement, and there's like 5 screenshots. It's early access. It's $2.39. It's English, Polish, Russian, Turkish, and Ukrainian. And then you have a little bit of animation here. This feels like this was probably a Russian troll game, or just a Russian low effort or unfinished game. I guess I could be super generous and wait to see somebody review this, but almost certainly this isn't a finished product. Like, if it was a finished product, they'd have a lot more to show. And I am not gonna get up in ranked, am I? I kind of wish Magic Arena changed how their system worked a little bit, so that you are actively rewarded for the highest point you reached, not for where you end. And I feel like Hearthstone did the same thing, where they rewarded you for where you ended at the end of the month instead of the highest point you reached. Because I would be a lot more motivated to continue playing if I knew that I've already locked in a position that I'm in. If I can't get ever above silver level 4, then I'll just, at around the last week of the month, I'll just stop playing ranked and say, well, that's where it's going to end. And since the new card expansions are coming out in about a week or about 10 days, everything's going to kind of change anyways as far as how people are playing ranked, because everybody's going to have new cards and everybody's going to be at least trying out new decks. This guy has 64 health. Next we have a game on Steam called Hockey Split. This looks like a top-down hockey game. 3-on-3. Maybe more than 3-on-3. It's just not visually polished enough. It's $1.99. English only. Bunch of achievements. Rocket League is being suggested instead. And I would agree with that. Well, let's go ahead and just block and kill creatures. Let's see. Next we have a game that's just a bunch of Asian characters. This looks like it is some kind of war simulating, maybe from a mobile game from the looks of those graphics. It seems like you have some interesting art style that you don't get to see enough of, in my opinion, although it does seem like this is not really consistent art. And then a lot of stuff here, so this does definitely feel like a mobile game. It seems like the fashion also changes based on the regions you're in, but the actual gameplay looks particularly boring. Doesn't really matter, English is not supported. It's $8.54 and it's Chinese only, which I guess I have to applaud them for not making a Chinese only game that is just yet another Chinese game focused around ancient feudal China and ancient feudal Chinese characters. Putting it in a more global perspective with different characters, different fashion is interesting, although it is also exactly the opposite of what the Chinese government wants. They want every single thing to be a celebration and reinforcement and propaganda of a traditional Chinese culture that is not really even, in my opinion, in line with what actual Chinese culture is. It would be the equivalent if people in the United States still were promoting TVs and movies and books about everybody being dressed as pilgrims and acting under the puritanical religious motivations that pilgrims had. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Story Into the Dream World, Volcano in Possession. This looks like a bullet hell shoot 'em up game, but it looks like it's probably a Chinese one that's not very well designed or polished. Just a lot of text here. A lot of text even on screen when you're playing the game. English not supported, free to play again. Japanese and Korean. Alright, I'm wrong about that one then. So blame this one either on a bad developer in Japan or Korea. I would assume it would be Korea because this art style looks a little bit more Korean, and this writing looks a little bit more Korean. But I would have a hard time telling the difference between Korean writing and Japanese or Chinese writing. But also, you wouldn't really support the Korean language if you were just making a Japanese-only game. Whereas if you were a Korean making a Korean game, supporting Japanese would make some sense, because it's just a bigger marketplace, I think, for video games. Next game we have on Steam is called Deadly Runner, which looks like it's an infinite runner game where you're running as some kind of girl with long hair running in the wind, which you don't really see a lot of that, come to think of it. There's plenty of opportunities where someone like Lara Croft could have been running and her hair could be flapping all over the place, but they always put them in tight buns because I guess the animation is difficult in 3D modeling. Tight buns or tight ponytails, usually ponytails I'd say. Even in Bayonetta, which, by the way, Bayonetta came to the Xbox 360 10 years ago today, like, her entire hair effects really did not ever involve her hair flapping around as much as it probably should, considering how she was moving super fast and dashing all over the place. The irony here, though, is I may go back and look at some games and realize actually it does flap around and I've just not been paying attention. I think that's very possible. Otherwise though, Deadly Runner is $1.19, English only, and it does just look like it's an achievement game, so it's not something that I'll put on the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam called Ashes 2, which looks like it is a shelter simulation game. And we'd seen one of these before. Here you can see no real polish on the life bar, probably asset flips, collecting a bunch of stuff that probably is asset flips too. There might be kind of an idea here of taking the concept of 60 seconds of Fallout and merging it together. You could certainly make the argument that Fallout in particular does not really make you survive from the sense of you've just come out of a Fallout shelter and you've got to collect supplies and fight a small amount of raiders. Fallout turns it into a first-person shooter game where you kind of have an infinite amount of resources very quickly and don't have to really struggle or survive or play any kind of resource management. So I think that there would be something to that idea. Unfortunately, this just looks so much like an asset flip that there's not a game here. $4.99, English and Russian, which also is a red flag, certainly. Alright, let's do this. Alright. Next. I've got to attack with this. Go ahead and put this on the field. If he can get 2 damage done to me, then he's won. And I think he can, because he can just spend 3 mana, make that unblockable, and there's nothing I can do. Like, I don't have enough on the field. It was going to get him to 6 anyways. I have no chance. Just falling down. Unfortunately, this developer who made Ashes 2 has a mixed review for Ashes 1 and a mixed review for all the other games he's made, of which there's 4, so yeah. My instincts were not wrong there. Not good games. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Summer Game Heroes. This looks kind of like almost a Wii Sports that's not on the Wii. It kind of doesn't look like there's anything wrong here. Although each one of these mini games might play terribly and might be kind of nothing. They might be something. It's free, but then it's $12.99 for the full version as DLC. It's got 11 achievements. It's got a bunch of language support. I'm gonna put this on the fall list and see what reviewers have to say about it, because, you know, it doesn't look terrible. I suspect as we approach the next Olympics, we will start to see more and more Olympic style games come out, and there's probably going to be at least one actual good Olympics game that comes out, but I wouldn't guarantee it, frankly. We may see dozens upon dozens of things come out and then they turn out to all be terrible. Next we have a game on Steam called Wild Island, which I think is probably a Chinese strategy RPG, maybe a Japanese one. English is not supported, it's $2.99 in Chinese only. It's not 16:9 and it's not full screen if you take a look there. Although I guess I should also again say at least this doesn't just scream Chinese culture being shoved in your face like so many other games. I mean, frankly, it has just gotten to the point where it's a pet peeve that I'm developing for as many games like that as there are. Next we have a game on Steam called Deep Ocean Rush, which looks like it's a tower defense game. Yep, it seems like it's an Atlantis style, Atlantis based tower defense game. Yeah, okay. $1.39. We haven't seen games that are just straight up tower defenses in a long time. This is English and Russian. Doesn't matter. It's a tower defense game. It would never make it to the fall list just for that reason alone. I guess the question really is, perhaps Valve really has stopped tower defense games from being improved. But if that is the case, that's like the only thing I have seen that would have been actually, as a category of games, completely banned, whereas everything else seems like it is totally allowed. Probably should have played that a couple turns ago. Go ahead and play this. And no attack. Next we have a game on Steam called Wear Rope, which is effectively Flappy Bird, but it's using the gold ring and a wire like you would do on a carnival game. It looks incredibly low effort and asset flippy. Well, maybe not even asset flippy, just low effort single screen Unity type game. They want $30 for this game. Ridiculously expensive. Ridiculously expensive. I guess they're hoping one sucker will buy it and that will recover the 2 hours they used to put it together. Which is exactly what it looks like, is that it took only about 2 hours. Next we have a game on Steam called Push Sticks, which I would like to do a puzzle game based on this. Usually this is a parking puzzle game. The question, I guess, is the price and how many puzzles there are here. And frankly, this would be one of those puzzle games I'd only spotlight for a very brief amount of time. Again, this is $30. I think it's probably from the same developer, and it's English only. Let's look at this developer. No, it's not the same developer, but almost certainly it's the same entity. You don't have randomly two people decide to put low effort games on sale for $30 and on the same day. Somebody is pulling some shenanigans here. Let's see. Do I want to attack? Yeah, let's go ahead and attack. I might actually win this if I can succeed. Let's see. Next we have a game with just a bunch of Asian characters. Looks like it's a low effort RPG maker if I was to guess. Probably Chinese. It really doesn't look like it's much of even an RPG game. English not supported, 99 cents at least. Chinese only. And yeah, we certainly are getting a lot of that. I don't think I can do anything more. So I'm just trying to do a little bit more damage. Can't attack for some reason. He's played something. Something here changes the cost. Last chance. Wish I could undo that. Can we undo that? No. So this guy's just gonna attack me twice and win. Well, Open Critic has an article here. Twitch is giving away 10 free games this month, which is interesting. I suppose the games are Dendera, Anarchute, Kingdom New Lands, A Normal Lost Phone, Splasher, Enter the Gungeon, Ape Out, Gato Robot, Roboto, and Heave Ho. Ape Out is interesting because it was also given away for free on the Epic Store, so I think in general it just kind of failed as a game, and so they're giving it away on everything. But it is an interesting point that if something's given away on one platform, there's a decent chance that it is getting given away on another form. And then as I was scrolling down here you have about the authors, and then here you have a anime character. Michelle Ariata, not really professional person, frankly. You probably shouldn't have an anime character if you're being a professional reviewer on Open Critic. For as ugly as some of the guys on Tech Raptor sometimes look in their headshots, their pictures, at least that it's real pictures of them. Of course, I guess that is also the pot calling the kettle black, since I don't use an icon or a picture either, and claim to be somewhat of a video game journalist. I just use a logo. But I think the argument could probably be made. There's a difference between depicting yourself, not depicting yourself, and depicting yourself as something completely different from what you are in a professional environment. Of course, plenty of other YouTubers do it too. And they do have cartoon versions of themselves. So maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. Or maybe I'm on the wrong side of history with that one. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Gene Rain Wind Tower, which is already mixed. This must be a free-to-play game that is a Battleborn clone, and it must just play terribly. Saying it's an RPG. It's $10.39 with a couple bits of DLC that seem to be not available for purchase. It's Chinese. That's probably the main problem. Yeah. I would assume that it's not very good from the mixed reviews, and for that reason I'm not going to bother to try to put it on the follow list. We have about 25 more games to talk about. We've already been going 2 hours, and then there's plenty of victories I'm not getting. I guess on the weekend I probably won't try very hard to play any extra Magic, and then once Monday starts we'll try somewhat hard to get those 10 daily quests. I think that's somewhat of a middle step that can be done without taking too much time, but certainly Magic is probably taking up too much time, even when I'm mostly ignoring it. This guy has no other cards, it looks like, so let's go ahead and attack. No other creatures. Next we have a game on Steam, this couple Asian characters called Shin Shan, which looks like some kind of card game, but the art that's being shown on the card is not being depicted right at all. Look how some of these cards are super wide and some of these are super thin, and it looks like this card art is probably been either developed for a completely different game or just stolen straight up. This is early access, English not supported, $2.99, single player only, Chinese only. So there really is no reason why you would want to play an ugly looking collectible card game that is single player only. Okay, we've got 7, 8 to this. I think we'll just leave this at where it is, and then no attacks, I guess. Well, I could attack, it doesn't even really matter. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Airborne Trials, which looks to me like it's probably just a collection of shapes maybe it's a jumping game. Like, I would need to see this in action to even figure out what you do. And like, yeah, it does seem like you're just jumping. It's just a parkour game. It's early access, $5.99, English only, third party ULEF for no reason. It's not anything. I'll go ahead and play this. Yeah, pretty much all the games we've seen today are that same story. It's nothing. This guy's gonna take a while to play. We have a game on Steam called Later, which seems to be a platforming puzzle game, kind of like Limbo with some light elements. And maybe there's something here? This is one of those games that might be good to play and might not be. It's $6.99, it's English only. I'd probably want to play inside the sequel from the same developers as Limbo first, but I'll put this on the follow list and we'll see. See what other people have to say. I can't activate this to tap this. So if he can do 4 more damage. This should win the game for me. If it doesn't, I'm out of luck. But you can see I'm slowly falling behind, even in my victories. I'm not getting ahead. I need a good win streak of 2 or 3 victories, not just one. Some quick disconnects or something like that. Next we have a game on Steam, Labyrinths of the World, the Wild Side Collector's Edition. This is a hidden object game from Big Fun Games, obviously, because it has Collector's Edition at the end. And yeah, they all look the same. $12.59, English only. Nothing really more needs to be said about it. It really does feel like hidden object fans are the original video game whales at this point, though. It seems like there are some people out there that just play hidden object games non-stop, a new one every week, and don't mind spending a significant amount of money to see that goal accomplished. Can't really get rid of that, so we'll do that and hope that's the right one. Next we have a game on Steam called Forest Woodman, which looks like it's a Duke Nukem clone, except for it's in a forest. Yep. I don't know what else you can say. It looks kind of like what an early 90s attempt at doing Doom or Wolfenstein 3D would be. $2.54, English and Russian. So yeah, just another weird low effort Russian game. And we're certainly getting a lot of those. Next we have a game on Steam called Rainbow Dreams, and by the look of the animation style, this looks like a Japanese visual novel of actual interest. Visual novel, anime cute. Got an anime girl Another anime girl. A anime spider girl. Some of these secondary characters look a little bit less visually polished on their drawing. This is $9.99, which is a little expensive, a little cheap. But then there is a deluxe edition for $22.47. And it's English only without full audio. That seems a little weird. And I haven't heard of Epic Works or Top Hat Studios. So I'll put this one on the follow list, but it might be that it's not much of a visual novel or not super well received. But the animation does look good, so I can only just blindly speculate. I guess CES is happening relatively soon, but I don't know what CES really has to do with video games anymore since E3 split off of CES. So, like, it's theoretically possible that the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X came out at CES instead of E3. Or some other actually important gadget or actually important bit of computer hardware got announced at CES, but I don't really think that's the case. CES has for many years been completely unimportant to anybody except for the most hardcore gadget people. The Consumer Electronics Show not being super successful when there's very few consumer electronics people want to buy. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article, the best of 2019, the top 10 game developers of the year. Again, Gamasutra putting out their 2019 end of the year content the week later. I don't see why you would ever want to name specific companies, and I mean, this is at the core of it the problem with corporations in general. Instead of saying somebody at Game Freak did a good job making Pokemon Sword and Shield, which would be debatable by many people, you're saying Game Freak as a corporation is the entity that should get the rewards and the applause, and that's just wrong. It's just morally wrong. It's mentally wrong. It's stupid. In general, it's not the way to reward things. If anything, video game sites, and particularly Gamasutra with their GDC, who kind of, they know the names of the developers of games. If anything, they should be working very hard to applaud the efforts of individual developers, and not just indie developers, but I mean the programmer on Sword and Shield should get the applause and the fame if they did something good in Sword and Shield with the programming, which I don't think they really did. On top of that, that list of game companies really was just a list of probably people who fund GDC, if I was to guess. And it's probably just a list of affiliates. Moving on, we have a game here called VR and then a bunch of Asian characters. This looks like a VR simulation of sorting trash, which in some areas of the world sorting trash actually means something. In some areas it's just all means nothing. I would almost say this is a Korean game because of the sorting trash, where they take that very strictly. English not supported here, $99.99. Chinese. Now, what's really funny about a Chinese game developer making a game about sorting trash is, you know, in some of the backwoods parts of China, they just dump trash directly into the rivers. So then there's definitely Chinese citizens that aren't following the regulations and rules for sorting trash, but whatever. It's just obviously another cheap attempt at getting people to spend way too much money on a terrible game. Speaking of spending too much money on games, Gamasutra has an article. These are the highest grossing Steam games on 2019. I think these probably were already mentioned by Steam, and we probably already covered them. There was, in the end of the year lists, specifically some lacking holes. These are like the best sellers per month. You have Senran Kagura Burst Renewal, but none of the cheap games like that were adult games last year that kind of flooded the list of the top selling games for 2018. None of them really showed up in this list, and so I think this is probably a curated list, unless all of a sudden people stop buying Elude games, which seems questionable. Particularly the game with the thumbnail of the anime girl tied up in bondage. That game is like 99 cents, and that was one of the best sellers for 2018. I figured that game would probably still be on the top sellers for 2019, but maybe everybody bought it who was going to buy it. You do have a few things like Day-Day Live Reincarnation and Love S, Love Cube, so that maybe I just didn't look too hard. Custom Order Made, I believe, is full on a sex game that you have to patch. So, yeah, there are some. I just didn't see them the first time, I guess. But nothing super surprising, although, you know, some of them kind of surprising. I'm surprised, if anything, the fact that this game, AI Somnimium Files, was a top seller for September. That probably means not much came out in September to compete with it. I'm glad to see River City Girls as a top seller, but I'm also surprised. Blasphemous was promoted. Yeah, there definitely were months, if I went through this list a second time, where I could point out that no AAA games worth mentioning came out at all. Like Halo Master Chief Collection came out in December, and then Jedi Fallen Order came out in November, and let's ignore WWE 2K. Indivisible has been super hyped, but that's not really a AAA game, so with the exception of Destiny 2 coming to Steam, nothing came out in October. Greedfall's not big enough, Code Vein's not big enough, Gears 5 is, I guess, big enough, but it also kind of isn't worth mentioning. Like, I'm already at the point where it doesn't really feel like I need to cover Gears 5. Let's see, is there anything in August? I don't see a single game in August worth mentioning. Age of Empires is the biggest game for August. And then anything for this month? July? No, nothing big came out in July. Bloodstained came out in, I guess, June. But that's kind of it. Plague Tale Innocence came out in May. Beat Saber came out in May. Rage 2 came out in May, but it's not worth mentioning. There's definitely a lot of AAA games that could have kept people's attentions. This might be another adult game. Like Rage 2 could have kept people's attention if it was good. Layers of Fear 2 came out and was never even mentioned. I didn't even remember it. Things like Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney is not a big enough game to really mention, but it's interesting. Mortal Kombat 11 came out to no real applause. Meanwhile, Zakai Zero came out to no interest. So nothing in April. Bob Is You's not big enough to mention. Devil May Cry came out in March. But that's kind of it. Yakuza 0. No, Yakuza Kiwami came out. Let's see. Anything else? Metro Exodus came out in February. Tales of Vesperia, not big enough. Resident Evil 2. Yeah. It really feels like Resident Evil 2 was the big game for at least half of the year. Whereas, like Catherine Classic, not big enough to mention. Wall True Learn. Haven't even heard of this game. Like, I need to put that on the follow list. PC Building Simulator. And yeah, there's just literally nothing that came out for at least a third of the year. Like, you could really boil down most of... Well, that's probably a good card. Boil down most of the entire year down to Resident Evil 2. If you'd just bought Resident Evil 2 in January and played it over and over again, you probably would have been pretty happy. Let's see. So here's that game, Wall True Learn, which looks like a programming game of some sort. It's rated very positively, so I'd be interested in checking it out. $12.99, English and a bunch of other languages, although the languages are kind of a red flag with them being Russian and Korean and Hungarian. So yeah, I'll put that on the follow list. Now I'm going to try really hard to wrap up this stream. We may even have some games left over. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The Witcher 3 hits a new peak player record on Steam in wake of the Netflix show. Which, okay, yeah. Although, in fairness, I think it is worth mentioning that Good Old Games is owned by CD Projekt Red, and they pushed a lot of people to buy The Witcher 3 on Good Old Games. So people playing it on Steam either came to it maybe a little bit later to the party or bought it a second time. Which is certainly the situation I'm in, where I'd like to buy it a second time and get the DLC and play the DLC. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Utaware Rumono, Mask of Deception and Mask of Truth are coming to PC on January 23rd. Prelude to the Fallen to follow. So, 3, I believe, visual novels coming in the Utaware Rumono series. I believe I'm pronouncing that somewhat right. Somewhat close. Let's see, and apparently they're RPG games, not visual novel games. Okay. There is something I think that could be said that I've kind of dropped the ball on even figuring out what the good and important JRPG games are, because it literally could be this series that I'm talking about, the Utawei Romano series, or it could be that that series is insignificant and doesn't matter at all, and I really wouldn't even know the difference. So here's the Steam page for Mask of Deception, which I don't want to show the video because it's probably a bit of possible copyright claims. But yeah, it seems like it's kind of more of a feudal Chinese environment, or feudal Japanese environment, probably. January 23rd planned release date. English with Japanese full audio. 30 plus hours of story and gameplay. 30 plus hours in a JRPG might really be a great number, because JRPGs in particular could go for 60 to 100 hours and you just don't know, and a game that requires less grinding would be appreciated. Here's the Mask of Truth game. This does seem like the actual gameplay is more of a grid-based location. So, in a funny way, what they're really trying to do here is sell you 2 or 3 games, and they are not really telling you the price of them. So this one is 50 hours of gameplay, so you've got a bit of a commitment already between 3 different games. It might very well get up to 120 hours of gameplay for a JRPG, which is a lot, certainly. A lot of grinding at that point. Often I have to think about how can I speed things up. I don't think I've seen this card before. Let's see, play this and kill this, and then put this on the field, and then attack. Next we have a game on Steam called William's Love Prelude, which looks like it's kind of a anthropomorphic cat RPG game, or fox character RPG games. I guess they're foxes. The animation looks kind of good, but the actual game just looks very RPG Maker. It's $8.99, it's English only. And frankly, this might be a little too much anthropomorphic animals for my tastes. I don't think I could put up with that for very long. Like maybe 1 or 2 characters in a group, but for the entire game to be the focus, it really gets into such a niche fandom of probably furry people. Attack with that. Next we have a game on Steam called Guardian of Rings, which looks like a low effort asset flip fantasy game. $2.39 discounted, English only, bunch of achievements with numbers in them, which is typical for an achievement game. Next we have a game on Steam called Araha Curse of Yi-Yun Island, which looks like a horror game. Like, it looks like a good polished horror game, so I don't know why it's mixed. Maybe it plays terribly, or is just really short or really low frame rate. Yeah, English and Korean full audio. This game just isn't made that well. No ghost and too cryptic. So maybe I could put this on the follow list and see if maybe the reviews give me some more details in English. It looks very visually polished. That's pretty much all I can say about it though. Black and black. Attack with this and go. Next we have a game on Steam called The Orphan, A Tale of an Errant Ghost hidden object game. Not from one of the major hidden object game sellers. And it's telling probably a more spooky story than you really would get from a hidden object game in general. It's $1.39. It's English only. I think I might be willing to put this on the follow list just because of its extremely cheap price. Like $1.50, less than $1.50 for a hidden object game, even if it is only like maybe 5 hours worth of games. If it tells a complete story, that wouldn't be really too bad. Go ahead and block it. Not sure I'm gonna actually get through all of this. I'd like to win. I'd like to move up in ranked play, but I don't know how to do that. I don't really have enough life. This guy can just buffer himself up. Alright. So if I do no attack, that's probably wrong. So I'm going to do one attack and see if he wants to defend or not. He probably should defend. Then I end a turn. And then I use this to tap him. And I've just got to tap him every turn until I can somehow win. Which is going to still be a big somehow. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Void TRLM / void terrarium details resources, customization, and diseases. I have no idea what this game is though. Like, it's not really even showing me much details. It looks like it's some probably low effort Switch esports game. Well, that's weird. Maybe I have seen a game like this. It's like a... It's due out for the PS4 and Switch January 23rd. Are you taking care of this creature, or is this creature you? Does seem weird. Whatever. I mean, that's probably stating the obvious, but boy, does that seem weird. Okay. Next. I've got to attack with one of these. Probably shouldn't have attacked with one of these, because now he's going to attack me back. So he's gonna do 2 damage. Even if I play right here. So even if I do this, he can still attack, and I can only defend against one of these guys. Maybe he doesn't wish to lose either one. Get rid of the guy with vigilance. Just check to make sure this is YouTube family friendly. Draw a card. Come on, draw another card. This on the field. This on the field. And then do no attacks. If I can buy myself 1 turn, I should be fine. Meanwhile, the PS4 Switch game Boka Hime project has some first details and screenshots. This is the Nippon Ichi game where you're cross-dressing to find out what happened to your older sister. So the main character is a guy cross-dressing as an anime girl. And you can see there's a bunch of other girls, or assumedly girls, in the series that is showing up. So this is kind of the art style you can expect. And around the themes, you can probably guess that it's going to be at least somewhat lewd, but probably not going into too explicit content, if I was to guess. That would be where I would put it. Let's just block. Yeah. Let's just not block. This is all going to come down to, can I play this, and will this save the day? Right. Yeah, I don't think this saves the day. I have to, like, because this can just attack. And this can't tap. So I think I've lost. So what do? We do all attack just for the fun of it? Guess that's what you do. I guess maybe you try to bring back your health somewhat. I mean, that does allow me to put 1 more person on the field. One person with lifelink. But yeah, it shouldn't matter. Should just lose. I think I've had enough as far as playing Magic today. 5 victories is not the 10 victories you need, and 5 out of the 15 for the week is fine. So let's just focus on the news. Gamatsu has an article here, Space Invaders, the Invincible Collection debut trailer. So there's a new Switch Space Invaders game which is a collection of, looks like a lot of the Space Invaders spin-offs, of which I don't think many of those are particularly great, but it is interesting to have like the original version and then the color version and then part 2, which is probably least known, although some of these other ones are probably pretty well unknown also. Even in a collection like that, this is selling for like $52, 5,200 yen, which is a little too expensive for a Western perspective, and probably right on the money of what they charge in Japan, because I'm sure they charge everything. Let's see. Where are we trying to go here? Gamatsu has a article here, and I guess I'll just mention it. Game industry New Year 2020 cards and messages. I'm fairly certain some of these will be at least a little bit not safe for work. They're just going to be pictures, tweets, things like that. So go out and seek that out yourself if you're interested. And I'm not going to cover any more games, and we're just going to cover the news. And we'll leave the rest for Wednesday. Let's see. PS4 has an article here. Lost Soul aside, aiming for a 2020 release. One of the most anticipated PlayStation China Hero Project titles. I'd kind of forgotten about the China Hero Project games. I hope they're good. Otherwise, that whole project is gonna fail pretty miserably. Yep. Major Nelson tweeted out that Bayonetta for the Xbox 360 was released 10 years ago today. You can still enjoy it on Xbox One via backwards compatibility. And he put out the picture of Bayonetta. So, yeah. 10 years. It's been 10 years. It's been a long time. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here for the PC, PS4, and Switch. This week's Japanese game releases: Super Robot Wars for Switch and PC, Monster Hunter World Iceborne for PC, and more. So, let's see. Several games came out. So, Japan is back to business as far as releasing games. I'm not sure there's particularly any other bits of information here. Some eShop cards and PlayStation Store cards were also sold, but what's not being listed usually here, usually you get like the sales releases and you'll see hardware sales, and I'm not seeing any of that, and they're depicting it in a different format than usual. Gamatsu has an article here. Masahiro Ito is working on a new title as a core member. I can tell you nothing yet, he says. This is the Silent Hill monster designer. Good chance he's working with the guy who made Death Stranding, and he's on their team. I wouldn't be surprised one bit. Doesn't mean there's going to be a new Silent Hill game, but there's good possibility there's something that's sort of like a Death Stranding game that comes out. Well, sort of like a Silent Hill game. Yeah, hopefully there aren't any more Death Stranding games. And somebody kind of holds him back a little bit more and makes him more traditional gameplay. TechRaptor has an article here for the Mosaic review, which Mosaic, I guess, is a game. They gave it a 7.5. Mosaic isn't always great, but it's a fun, lovely game that manages to hold attention easily enough. Also, it has Blip Blop, which apparently is some mini game in it. Fun Days segments, Fun Daydream segments, amazing visuals, Blip Blop, Cons are generic story, occasionally frustrating, and real-time RTS segments, real-time strategy segments drag. Okay. Well, is this page gonna load? Alright, here we go. TechRaptor has another article here. Iran-based developer summoned to court over Children of Morta. I doubt this has much, if anything, to do with current relations between the United States and Iran, or Iran and the rest of the world. I imagine this has more to do with probably specific grievance between the creators of Children of Morta and this company. Let's see. Dead Mage Studios head speaks. The team that led the Iran-based indie studio Dead Mage announced today that his team was summoned to an Iranian court over non-compliance of Islam within their game Children of Morta. So, this has nothing to do whatsoever with the West, so much as Dead Mage made a game Children of Morta. People like that game, but because they're in Iran and because they're Iranian, they're under Islamic law of some sort, whether that's Shia law or something else, and thus anything you try to do creative is going to be challenged and probably determined to not be within the law. This is inherently the problem of trying to be creative in a theocracy, or in general just living in a theocracy and being held to strict religious standards. Let's see. Complaint that the game includes dancing, lack of hijab, lack of praising for God, use of magic for fighting demons, and also a burial not complying with Islamic law. Apparently this tweet has now since been removed. This is a problem. I feel like I even mentioned when I first heard that there was an Iranian company, and maybe it wasn't Dead Mage Studios, maybe it was a different one, that just doesn't make any sense. This would be my attitude, frankly, for any Middle Eastern country, including like Israel under like mostly Jewish law. It's just like when you have such a deeply religious focused government, you can't be creative, and that's kind of why kind of my problem with China in a lot of ways too. Although in China their religion is the state of China, it's communism, but it severely limits the number of places where a game could even be created, which severely then limits the viewpoints and perspectives from which a game can be created, which sucks. It sucks particularly well when you see that Children of Morta seems like it was a good game, well received in the West, and was programmed well. So there are skilled, talented people out there that very possibly would have to flee their entire country and change their entire lives and lifestyles just to make art, and that's messed up and wrong. Of course, I could go into a longer rant there, but I don't feel a real need to. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Analysts say free-to-play games pushed digital game spending over $109 billion in 2019. Shame on anybody who paid for free-to-play stuff, although, in all fairness, I guess I did that for Magic Arena, so I'm not blameless. Gamatsu has an article here. Labyrinth of the Witch is coming to PC January 20th, a dungeon exploration RPG that's currently available for Switch, iOS, and Android. So it's getting ported, basically. Doesn't look particularly interesting, so it's not something I think I would spend any more energy on. And then Gamatsu has an article here. Higurashi When They Cry, new anime project has been announced. There are several Higurashi When They Cry video games out there as visual novels, I believe. So There's a trailer here. I will leave it to you to find that trailer and watch it if you want to, because it's very possibly not YouTube family friendly. TechRaptor has an article. NVIDIA announces and the Asus Republic of Gaming, is that what that stands for? Swift 360 hertz monitor for esports. So like 3 times as fast as a 120 hertz monitor, and arguably I don't think you really even need 120. I think you could probably get away with just a really good 60, maybe 144 hertz monitor for the rest of your life, unless you are an esports person and money's no object, then it probably is fine. Which that then brings me to the Humble Bundle. Let's see if there's any new Humble Bundles available. Looks like maybe a new Humble Bundle will start in a day or 2, maybe 3. But yeah, there's no games bundles right now. And then if that brings me to my Twitter feed, let's just scroll down somewhat more. There was a TechRaptor article here. Destiny 2 Stadia player base reportedly has dropped more than 50% in a month. Nobody's playing Stadia. Rebel Galaxy Online put out an FAQ about when it is going to launch on Steam, which I guess that might be important information to talk about on Wednesday. Let's see. Crytek wants to dismiss its own lawsuit against Star Citizen's developers. They must have come to some kind of agreement, or they must have realized that they were going to lose. See, TechRaptor has an article here that says DICE will probably rebrand, says the incoming studio head Vince Zampella. Let's see if there's any other bit of games or news. Let's see. Kerbal Space Program developers announced a new Balsa model flight simulator title. Balsa model? I don't know what a Balsa model is, but it sounds like it's probably a wooden toy airplane. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath HD for Switch launches January 23rd. 23rd is probably the point when games are going to start coming out for real. The House of Fate Morgana Dreams of Revenants edition is coming to the Switch, which I think that is a visual novel. EA announces an international Apex Legends Global series. We are actually getting news. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a video blog. Historians discuss Assassin's Creed 2. That's probably a very old one. Let's see. Final Fantasy VII Remake PC version likely, says Data Miners. Let's see. Sanzara Games is hiring a level designer. We'll talk about that. Call of Duty Jetpack's unlikely to return anytime soon. Yeah, we've been streaming for a while. I think we've covered all the news though. Yeah, that's it. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.